Hi guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube. So I'm going to do a serious video as a follow-up to one of my more popular videos where I talked about some of the ridiculous prices being paid for WATA graded games. That video centered on a lot of the prices being paid for current graded Nintendo games in factory sealed condition that were being sold through heritage auctions. Well, I got an interesting question from somebody that pointed out an interesting trend that's happening in the graded video game marketplace that I want to discuss in this particular video. One of the things that's happening is people are now paying a premium for graded Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and even Nintendo 64 games that are not factory sealed, but instead are complete in the box. Now, somebody wanted me to comment on this trend because the trend seems to be geared towards graded video games by WATA more than any other company, and or even in regards to raw or ungraded complete in box games. So I went and I started researching this because every week I spend about 10 hours a week, guys, doing price research on antiques and collectible markets that interest me. So I research coins, I research currency, I even research a lot of the pop culture based collectibles that I talk about on this very channel, meaning stuff like video games, comic books, vintage toys, Magic the Gathering cards, even Pokemon cards. I research a lot of that stuff on an ongoing basis. So I went over and I started looking at completed auctions on Heritage, Certified Link, and for those of you that are unaware what Certified Link is, it's actually owned and operated by the same people that own Comic Link, just that it's geared towards collectibles that are not comic books, but can be third-party graded. So on Certified Link, you're going to find coins, currency to a lesser extent, sports cards, and of course graded video games, items of that nature. And of course, we can't leave out eBay. eBay lately has been kind of like a dumping ground for a lot of different stuff in the graded, non-graded video game marketplace. I see a lot of interesting listings on eBay compared to Heritage and Certified Link, and I think that's primarily due to the fact that anybody can list anything they want on eBay. It's not vetted by an auction house. There's no third party involved other than eBay, which pretty much just takes a percentage of the transaction overall. They're not pretty much governing what's listed on the site unless if you put something up that is completely atrocious or something completely offensive or outside the category guidelines. That said, when I started to do my auction research in this vein, I started noticing that certain complete in box Nintendo games are selling for a significant premium if they're graded by WATA Games. So I wanted to do a video like this to warn a lot of my viewers and a lot of the starry-eyed speculators out there who think this is the next big thing and in 20 years they're all going to be retired in limos and yachts because they spent 20, 40, 50, 60, 70,000 on graded video games back in 2019. Again, guys, this is a very speculative market. You know, I want to do a video on population reports and how important population reports are in regards to graded collectibles. For those of you unaware, if you log on to any of the major grading company sites like CGC Graded Comic Books or PCGS Coins or PMG, which is ironically affiliated with CGC, it's just the side of the business that does paper currency versus grading comic books. But if you log on to those sites, they have in-depth population reports. So if somebody sends an item like a 2000 Pokemon Rocket Dark Blastoise first edition card to PSA, this gets recorded in a population report. So you can see how many PSA 10s are out there of this particular card so that you can make an educated guess as to whether or not you want to buy the item at the current market value. Well, the problem with graded video games is WATA Games has only been in the market for a year or two at most. even VGA. VGA is still considered fairly new in regards to graded collectibles, even though they've been in business, over 5 years grading video games. And if we look at the other divisions that they have, when we look at like graded action figures, graded toys, they've been in business 10 years or longer in that realm. Well, that's still fairly new when we talk about population reports and what to look for in regards to quote-unquote rarity or scarcity as it comes to graded collectibles. So I want to warn you guys, if you're seeing stuff, and I'm going to go over some prices here that I found outrageous. For instance, there was on Certified Link a boxed gold Legend of Zelda game, meaning from 1987, that was graded by WATA Games. It was complete in box. It was not factory sealed. It was graded a 5.5. 5.5 condition is mid-grade on the WATA grading tier. It sold for $811. Now, I don't know what the person who bought that is thinking in their mind when they're buying an item like this. What I can tell you is, what's happening is a lot of speculators and a lot of unsophisticated, uneducated investors are coming into the graded video game marketplace en masse. This was predicted to happen. Full disclosure, I'm selling into this market. If you want to give me $811 for a WATA Games graded, complete in box Legend of Zelda game from 1987, I'll gladly take your money. I'll put it in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, coins, currency, collectible first edition books. I'm happy to take your money. Really. That's why I do these videos, to try to educate the speculators out there who think that this is the next big thing. And this thing is going to become so big, it's going to be equivalent to coins, currency, graded comic books, collectible first edition books. And it's just going to keep going and snowballing. And in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, there's going to be museums set up of vintage Nintendo games that are graded by WATA Games. I'm sorry, the pipe dream is not realistic at all. There's no fundamentals backing those dynamics of the market that would even give credence to that happening at this point in time. What it is it's a speculative bubble. If you want to buy into a speculative bubble, by all means, feel free if you got the money to spend. But just understand, when that market corrects, you're going to be left holding the bag. Now, some of those items, I've said this before, will continue to stabilize and or go up in value. Some people will win, but the majority of people will lose. So where am I getting at in this particular video? Because I know some of the people in the comment section of some of my videos, they claim, well, gee, all your videos are the same. All you do is warn about speculation and tell people where not to put their money. Well, the problem is that's because there's too much hype on sites like Nintendo Age, on YouTube, even the CGC graded comic book collecting forums. There's so much hype that it drowns out logic and reason. And that's why I created this channel. Not just to teach you guys fundamentals over how to analyze investments and how to look at the greater antiques and collectibles trade as a whole, but also to have the understanding that in a lot of these markets, this too shall pass. So, the problem with items like a Legend of Zelda complete in the box, graded by WATA Games, selling for $811, what that tells me is, this is the signal that it gives to somebody like me on the other end of the trade who has taken all passion outside his biased opinion so that he can fundamentally give an unbiased opinion on what's happening in the trade. This is what this tells me. People are pouring so much money into graded video games that factory seal copies of The Legend of Zelda, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, Kid Icarus, Metroid, games of that coveted nature, AAA first-tier Nintendo games, they're accelerating in value. Well, what's happening is speculators who don't have $3, $4, $5, $6, $7, $8, $9,000 to spend on one factory sealed game in near mint condition, they're viewing this from the sidelines and they're going, oh my God, I'm going to miss out on getting these games. These games are going to keep going up in value. Well, if I can't afford a factory sealed copy of The Legend of Zelda, what's the next best thing? Well, I'm going to get a graded, complete in-box copy of The Legend of Zelda. That'll be equivalent in value if the factory sealed copy keeps going up in value. My complete in-box copy that's graded by WATA will keep going up in value. Guys, that is a fallacy. There's no market fundamentals to even predict that the value of a complete in-box graded copy of The Legend of Zelda is even on par with a factory sealed copy of Legend of Zelda from 1987, all things being equivalent. By that logic, what's going to happen next? If some idiot pays $1,000 for a complete in-box copy of The Legend of Zelda, graded by WATA Games, I guarantee you the next thing that's going to be, well, I want a loose cartridge version of The Legend of Zelda, graded by WATA Games. And now you're going to see loose cartridges graded by WATA Games going up in value. Do you see the problem with this? Let me explain it to you in layman's terms. Here's the problem with this. There are more, just based on fundamentals, bear with me here. There's more copies of complete in-box Legend of Zelda games from 1987 on the market and out there floating around in video game collections than there would be factory seal copies. You all follow that logic. Now let's take it a step further. By that same logic, there's more copies of loose cartridge-only copies of The Legend of Zelda from 1987 than there would be of complete in-box copies and or factory sealed copies. So if you're a speculator and you're coming into the market and you can't afford a factory sealed copy of The Legend of Zelda in near mint condition for the regular Nintendo, your best bet, honestly, is to avoid the market as a whole. Because if the item in question is accelerating in value at such an exponential rate where you can't even keep up to buy the item, that is the direct definition of a speculative bubble. And this is my same argument against people that have it in their head, I have to get an Alpha Edition Black Lotus graded by BGS in 9.0 or 9.5, or a PSA 10 First Edition Charizard holofoil card from the base set of Pokemon from 1999. Do you see where I'm going with this? The items have been increasing in value exponentially so much that the trajectory cannot hold. Eventually, that bubble is going to burst. There's no such thing as an asset that goes up in value indefinitely. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the stock market as a whole, certain stocks, bonds, mutual funds, coins, currency, collectible first edition books, artwork, historical documents. You know, on this channel before, I mentioned the term greater fool. A greater fool is somebody that buys an asset at an appreciated price, and they're the ones that paid the most for that item. It normally applies to auction theory. I could do a whole video where I just talk about the analysis of auction theory and the psychological parameters behind it, meaning why people get involved in an auction for an item and they pay a historic price for it and they think that they can easily sell that item for that same price on the secondary market or in the future for even more money, and why that's a very foolish analogy. If you win an auction and you pay a record-breaking price, you are considered the greater fool. You were the only one at that auction that was willing to pay that price in question. That is not the sign of a sophisticated investor. Now, when we get to certain segments of the greater antiques and collectibles trade, where we look at coins, where there may only be 4 in the world of that particular coin, or pieces of art where they're one of a kind, then you can argue that, well, there's only one of these particular paintings. For instance, if we're talking about a rare Rembrandt or even certain Picasso paintings where we know there's only one of a kind. If you pay a particular high record-breaking price for that particular item, you may be onto something. But to do it in the collectibles marketplace, that's very risky. And that's what a lot of these speculators that are going on Nintendo Age, that are going on a lot of these forums, that have YouTube channels of their own, that's what they're putting out, this false mentality that there's a coming gold rush into this market, and you need to buy now, otherwise there's going to be a fear of missing out. I'm telling you here first, from somebody who has 3 decades or more of experience in the greater antiques and collectibles trade, that is complete false. Most of the items I'm seeing that are selling for record-breaking prices in the collectibles marketplace are not one of a kind. And that goes for even stuff like your vintage prototype rocket-firing Boba Fett figures, or even some of the more esoteric Magic the Gathering pieces of original art, and even in the Pokemon realm, a lot of your 1999 holofoil cards that are first edition. There's not just one out there, guys. There's a lot out there. You have to understand that going in. When it comes to graded video games, whether we're talking complete in box games, loose cartridges that are graded, and or factory seal games, you have to understand that because WATA Games has only been on the market for a year or two, we don't know how many of these items are out there. You guys are taking an extreme risk by paying several thousands of dollars for these items now. If you take a wait-and-see attitude, just wait out the market a year or two. Yes, certain prices will be higher, but in the long run, if you wait 5 years, I guarantee you some of the prices for some of this stupid stuff that's selling for an insane amount compared to what it was selling for just a year or 2 or 3 years ago, a lot of these items are going to either stabilize or drop in price. Please do not get caught up in the hype. This is something that a lot of you guys who are going on Nintendo Age and some of these other video game collecting forums don't seem to understand because you're interacting with other speculators. The smart money is selling right now. I've said this before. I've shot videos in my video game room before. That's right upstairs in this house. The video I did on Amiibo, the video I've done on GameStop was all shot in that room. Any item that has appreciated significantly in the last several years that's video game related, I'm selling. I'm not keeping this stuff. Even something like this. Someone wants to give me 50 bucks for this. It's theirs. I don't care. You got to understand, guys, a lot of this stuff is being hyped up by market manipulators, speculators, and uneducated investors. The people who are making money in Magic the Gathering, in Pokemon, in graded video games, in raw video games, with few exceptions, and there are some exceptions, Rudy being one example, SM Pratt being another example, are selling into this market. If you want to buy Magic the Gathering and quote-unquote try to invest in it, your best bet is to go after, I've said this before, authentic, factory sealed, vintage reserve list era booster boxes. Same thing's true with Pokemon. Forget the individual cards, guys. Go after the vintage factory sealed booster boxes. Take the logical approach and avoid crap like copies of Castlevania that are complete in box that are selling for $750 because they were graded by WATA Games in 9.6 condition. Or if you want another example, a copy of the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games created by Ultra Games back in the mid to late 1980s for $375, graded by WATA Games in 9.4 condition. My question to you speculators, and this is how I'm going to end the video, where were you guys when you could go to any flea market, just like I did, on any Saturday or Sunday, and get a complete in box copy of The Legend of Zelda for $20 to $40? Where were you guys? How come now, all of a sudden, it's this great collectible that's going to be a great investment? Why wasn't it back then? Because you're listening to speculative hype, and you're listening to the stupid hype that auction houses, and yes, I'm throwing them under the bus in this video as well, that keep putting out that tells you this is going to be the next big thing. We sold this for $5,000. Did it ever occur to you that the person who paid $5,000 for that item is an idiot? Is that really what you want to emulate? So I'm just telling you guys, I'm not telling you not to buy this stuff. I'm not telling you to have fun if you don't have if you have the means. What I am telling you, though, is to use caution. Use logic in a practical approach. Don't come into the market full of passion and starry-eyed dreams where this stuff is going to be the next big thing. This video is now running towards 20 minutes. That's all I have. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for all your feedback. Thank you for all your comments. Again, this was not the video that I planned to do today, but I had to comment on this because the trend is there, and as they say, the trend is your friend until around the bend when it ends. Thank you, guys. Good night.